Serious question. Who came here to learn? Show of hands.
Yeah.
Right? Who came here to win some more business? Show of hands. Who came here for free food? I got you covered in all three departments. There's always one in the group, right? But I heard a funny story the other day about a real estate agent that ran into a genie, right? But you got to pay attention. The genie said, "Because you're a top real estate agent, I will grant you one wish." So the agent thought about it and said, "Well, I've always wanted to go to Barbados, but I hate flying, and I don't want to take a boat. Can you build me a highway?" And the genie said, "Are you nuts? Do you have any idea how long it will take to drop pilings in the Atlantic Ocean? The amount of concrete and asphalt we'd have to pour for over 1,000 miles, not to mention the environmental impact. Impossible. Please give me another wish." And the agent thought about it and said, "Well, can you make sense of this NAR settlement?" And then the genie said, "Well, did you want a 1-lane or a 2-lane highway?" No, NAR settlement. I have to say one thing that we can make sense of, right, is the fact that a buyer-broker agreement will most likely be needed, right? A buyer-broker agreement will be needed. And I have to say, the one thing that I think it is the best change to your industry in modern times. Implementing a buyer-broker agreement should have been standard across the industry 20, 30, 40 years ago, right? Because if you think about it, buyers are going to be loyal. They're going to be loyal to you, right? 50% of your industry was under a hiring basis. You would go and present in front of a seller, and the seller would make a decision if they wanted to hire you through a listing agreement, right? The other 50% of the industry was under a verbal basis. "Oh, okay, can you help me find a home?" "Oh yeah, I can help you." It was a verbal basis. They could call 4 other agents. So I happen to believe that buyer's agents have been abused for years. And what I wrote down is what will separate one agent from another. What will separate one agent from another? And the answer is presentation skills. Presentation skills. So welcome to Winning the Buyer Presentation Part 3, right? So I know some of you are thinking, well, what happened to Part 1 and Part 2, right? For those that have missed those particular presentations, well, welcome, you're here for Part 3, right? So the topics that we're going to be covering today are the art of presentation. We're going to go over conveying your story. We're going to talk about how to increase your value and mastering the buyer-broker agreement. So with great excitement, I'm here excited for you all to be here. Who here is new to a Scott Evans Team Luncheon? Raise your hands. All right, raise your hands. Well, welcome to all of you that are new. I just got one thing to say to you. It's about time. So those that have been to a Scott Evans Team Luncheon in the past, obviously you're not new. Who's been here to 2 of my different luncheons? Thank you. Who's been to 3 of my different presentations? Raise your hands. 3 of them? I think you guys have come to 3. I've done first-time home buyers, went in prior presentation too, right? So those that have come to my presentation in the past know that we always bring out new material. So I'm excited for you all to be here, and I'm grateful for those that have come in the past. So allow me to give you a little bit of background. My name is Scott Evans. I am 18 years in the business locally, and I've had the good fortune of helping over 20,000 families purchase a home all across the United States. Thank you, thank you. All right. Time out. See, I still haven't mastered the delivery of, the art. I know, Claudia was helping me with the clap. So Bridget, when I point to you, you're going to clap. So you're going to be my honorary clapper today. See, I haven't mastered the delivery of getting everyone to clap, so we're going to go ahead and fake it. So let's try this again. So my team and I have helped over 20,000 families purchase a home all across the United States. All right. So my passion is working with real estate agents. It's what I specialize in. And my goal is to help grow some market share together, right, with my agents. And if we stop and think about it, every family that we work with together is important. Do we agree? Every family is important. Because the truth of the matter is what we're doing, especially you all, is we're changing people's lives. We're changing people's lives. And I want you to know that it's something I don't take for granted at all. So it's an honor for you all to be here. And before I begin, I'd like to bring up one thing to the group, and I hope you take this as in a positive way, because it's meant to be positive. I firmly believe that each one of us can be better than we are today, right? I truly believe that, because we're constant students and we're constantly trying to get better, right? And it's an honor for you to be here today, because it's going to be an incredible time that we're going to have. And if you notice in their presentation, I'm not going to be going through the slideshow here, because I have the presentation for you all to follow along in your packet. So everyone, if you want to pull out your presentation, and if you notice, my presentations are all black, right? It's the theme that I go with. And I mentioned that because I didn't want to add any white spaces for you to kind of take notes. So I want to encourage you to take notes on the back of each slide, because the material that we're going to go over, you're going to probably want to take some notes as we go through this content. Now, with any presentation, there's always going to be some ground rules. So the ground rules that we're going to be having are as following. The first rule is a cross-country ground rule, a cross-country rule. So cross-country mortgage is the #1 mortgage company in the United States, the #1 direct lender in the US. And the owner, Ron, has done an incredible job growing this company. There's about 800 branches of cross-country mortgage in the US. And I think 799 of them are literally in Southern California, right? And I say that as a joke, just because just like in real estate, you all run your own businesses within a brokerage, right? So the timelines, the value propositions, everything that we're going to be going over today is specific to the Scott Evans team, not cross-country. So it wouldn't be fair to take this information, go to another branch of cross-country mortgage, another loan officer, and expect them to operate the same. They're not built the same way, right? This is not their presentation. This is not a cross-country presentation. This is a Scott Evans presentation. So if we can agree to that first ground rule with a big yes on the count of 3. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Yes. All right. So now that we got the corporate stuff out of the way, the next one is more of an emotional rule, right? It's a very vulnerable. I know that your time is extremely valuable, and I put a lot of work in this material. But after we're done today, if you find absolutely no value being here, I want you to come up to me after, outside, and come up to me, and I'll give you a 100% money-back guaranteed refund, because the new timers think they're getting a bill because it's a free event. And the third rule: let's have some fun today, right? Let's ask some great questions. Fair? So let's dive in. So almost everything we do as kids and when we're adults is a performance. So every single one of you in this room today is a performer, right? You all chose real estate, right? I chose mortgage, right? I am a performer. This luncheon is a performance. So with that said, I'd like to dive in a little bit further. I recently pulled the average income for an actor. Average income for an actor is $59,901. Can a real estate agent make more than $59,000 a year? Yes. Without a doubt. Now, this is averaging out for those that are in theater and so on, but obviously, some actors can make a lot more, right? Then I pulled the starting salary for NFL players. Starting salary is $795,000 a year. Can a real estate agent make more than $795,000 a year? They can, 100%. NBA starting salaries, $1.1 million a year. Can a real estate agent make more than $1.1 million a year? I mean, they can, 100%. So I say that because your mindset shouldn't be any different than what they do versus what you do, right? So I look at myself no different than an athlete. I want to be the Michael Jordan of mortgage, right? So Michael chose basketball, I chose mortgage. Barry Sanders chose the NFL, right? You all chose real estate. So we have to look at ourselves as performers, because when we look at ourselves as a performer, we put ourselves in that mindset, and it changes the way we view ourselves first and foremost, right? Our confidence in who we are as individuals. Because if you stop and think about it, you're 1099, and the amount of homes that you sell is based on your performance, right? So just like the grades that someone gets in school. So exactly what you earn on your 1099 and the amount of homes that you sell is going to be based on your performance. So here's the question I ask myself. How can we elevate our performance, right? How can we elevate our performance? First thing I wrote down is we got to take it more seriously. We got to take it more seriously, right? How many of us are actually taking what we do seriously, right? It's not to say we're not going to have fun in what we do, but if we take it a little bit more seriously, right, We can start improving our performance, right? And that's, your performers that can operate at a very high level. Basketball player can make millions, real estate agent can make millions, right? It's just a function of your performance. The second thing that I wrote down is always improving, always improving. So for those that know me, no matter how good of a performance I might have, I only rate myself an 8 out of 10, never a 10, because there's always room for improvement. I could have a better opening, right? I could deliver a better presentation, right? I could make you laugh a little bit more, right? We can always be better. So we have to stay in the mindset of always improving. And that's, and I even said, but in a buyer presentation, I'm only performing against, in front of one buyer or in front of one person. So we have to live by the adage, and you may want to write this down. There's no such thing as a small audience, only a small speaker. So which simply means if 5 of you showed up today, all right, I'm going to give it my all. If 1 of you showed up, I'm going to give the same performance as if there's 400 people in the room, right? Because do our buyers and sellers deserve the best? They do, 100%, which gives us such an incredible advantage because our competition is incredibly weak, right? They're incredibly weak because most of them don't take what we do seriously, right? And most of them are not thinking themselves as a performer. So speaking of performing, I heard a great joke the other day about an actor that recently paid off his mortgage. So what do you call an actor that recently paid off his mortgage? Mortgage Freeman. All right. No more dad jokes for the rest of the evening, right? But another way we elevate our performance in our presentation is we got to have persuasion in our presentation. We got to have persuasion. So if you think about it, sometimes persuasion can be really viewed in a negative connotation, right? And persuasion can be both negative and positive. And the way that it's viewed negatively is if you're trying to convey someone into doing something and you don't plan on fulfilling it, what you say that you can do, right? Then it could be used as negative and you would be considered a fraud, right? But if you plan on fulfilling every single thing that you're promising that buyer or seller, then you have to have persuasion in your presentation because they're not aware of your services, right? And the only way they can become aware of your services if you persuade them in engaging with you, right? And hiring you and your services. So with that said, I said this in the past, one of my presentations, the world needs more imposter syndrome. The world needs more imposter syndrome. And what do I mean by that? See, imposter syndrome is when someone doesn't necessarily feel worthy of, or they feel like a fraud unless they can prove it to themselves over and over again. So I know it so well because I had imposter syndrome. And what do I mean by that? I'll give you the best example. You all heard me talk about my 10-day closing before. You've heard me talk about my 5-day inspection period. Do you know how many years I had to prove it to myself over and over and over before I can come out here and deliver to all of you saying that I can deliver on those timelines, right? Years, because I'm not a fraud, right? And I had a high degree of imposter syndrome. But back to persuasion. Every presentation has to be riddled with persuasion. Your listing presentation should be riddled with persuasion. Your buyer presentation should be riddled with persuasion. This presentation, I promise you, is riddled with persuasion, right? So I'm going to try to persuade you into using my services because I happen to believe I am the best for you. So here's the question. What are the 4 principles of persuasion? And there are 4 of them. Number 1, in your presentation, you got to have credibility. You got to have credibility, right? Let me give you an example. When I said to you all, let me give you a little bit of background. My name is Scott Evans. I'm 18 years in the industry, and I've had the good fortune of helping 20,000 families purchase a home. Is that credibility, right? So you got to have credibility. The second thing you got to have is you got to have common ground. You have to have common ground. What's the common ground that you're trying to establish with you and the customer? So if you notice, in my opening, I said I specialize in working with real estate agents, and I try to provide so much value that we can help grow some market share together, right? Growing some market share together is common ground. The third thing you have to have in your persuasion is evidence, right? Proof of what you're doing. Show the customer what you've done in the past, right? Show them what you've done in the past. How? Right? Show them proof. Show the evidence. So if you think about it in your opening lines, right, you're trying to formalize yourself with the buyer in a formalized presentation. Because now they're trying to, you're going to have them sign an agreement. In the past, it was verbal. Can you show me some homes? Yes, I can show you some homes. But now you're asking them to sign with you. So if you're thinking about your presentation, you got to have those 4 principles of persuasion. And number 4 is you got to have an emotional connection. Emotional connection. So did I end up saying that real estate agents change lives, right? Yes. And I want to be partnered with you. So some of you, that might have touched you just a little bit emotionally, right? Because buying a house is an emotional process. So we got to touch on that emotional nerve with the buyer in the buyer presentation so you can have that emotional connection. So those are the 4 principles of persuasion. Now, you can weave this into your openings. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is fill in the blank. I'm with fill in the blank. I've been in the industry for this many years, right? This is what I do. This is what I'm looking to accomplish, right? You got to be able to say it in a clear, concise manner and know your lines. So persuasion is super important. Speaking of principles, I heard a great one from the famous Groucho Marx. And he said, I stand on strong principles. And if you don't like those, I have others. But another way of elevating your presentation, you got to have storytelling. You have to have storytelling. I shared with you in my presentation that I always, the highest I'll ever give myself is an 8 out of 10. And a few years ago, I was doing a presentation, and an agent came up to me after, and she said, yeah, I got to tell you, I love all the content, everything that you're sharing with us. You do a great job, but I got to be honest, it's a tad bit boring. You could stand to use some humor, right? So I thought what she had to say, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to go find a humor coach. So I got introduced to a gentleman by the name of Craig Schumacher. And Craig Schumacher is an Emmy Award winner, writer, and he helped write a whole bunch of different, he's a stand-up comedian as well. And we became friendly, and I hired him as a humor coach. And Steve said to me, it's not even working. But I mean, I'm a 4-time analytical trying to be funny, right? It's really, really hard for me. But Craig always had a great way of sharing things for me to understand. And he said, one thing in your presentation, you always have to have storytelling. So I said, all right, well, how do I tell a story? He says, well, the first thing you got to do, you got to have a lot of details in the stories. So I said, details. All right, details. You got to have details. He said, you can never be too descriptive when telling a story. So I wrote down details. And then he says, the next thing you can have in proper storytelling is you got to name the characters. Even if you want to try to hide someone's identity, you got to give them names. Give them fake names, right? Because the people that are listening, right, when you give them names, they can understand it a little bit easier. And then the next thing he said is, if you want to be a little more advanced, you got to have voice inflection. Ups and downs. You remember what the joke that I said about the real estate agent and the genie? Could you imagine if I said, well, the real estate agent ran into the genie, and the genie said, I'm going to grant you one wish because you're a top producing real estate agent. And I mean, that's not really funny. But when I said, oh, I've always wanted to go to Barbados, right? It brings a little more, comedy because you're a performer, right? We all are performers, so have fun. So add voices, ups and downs and swings and everything. And then he said location, time of year. Always have, as much as you possibly can. And then more importantly, every story has to have these 3 things. Every great sitcom has. And what are those 3 things? He said the first thing that a story has is you got to have the setup. You got to have a setup. All right, well, I'm going to be speaking to some real estate agents. Give me an example of a setup. He said, if you think about it, every agent in this room, right, they're going to be selling to a first-time home buyer. They're going to be selling to someone that's maybe moving out of state, someone that's buying and selling, selling to an investor. There's maybe 1 or 2 other combinations, right? But it's typically the same story, right? Is it not? It's similar stories. So if you want to think about it, you got to think about some of the clients that you've served in the past and create a story for one of those clients. So when someone comes up, I'm a first-time home buyer, you can pull out a first-time home buyer story with that client. So as an example, oh, you're purchasing a home for the first time. Oh, I love working with first-time home buyers. About 50% of the business that I do is helping first-time home buyers. And I recently worked with a great couple. Their name was Bobby and Lauren. They were such a sweet couple. And they recently graduated college and they were going in their respective careers. Lauren was going to become a nurse practitioner and Bobby got into law. And they were thinking about buying their first home, but they wanted to wait until they got married. So I said I'd follow up with them after they got married, and I did. I followed up with them. They got married and unfortunately something happened. So I'm going to give a timeout, right? So is that the setup to a story, right? So you got to think about all the different first-time home buyers. Think of a first-time home buyer that you have, and that's who you want to now start create a story. And change the name, but inflame the story. It's okay. I inflame all my stories because I'm a performer, right? The stories I'm going to be telling today are inflamed a little bit, just so you know. And then he said, every story has to have conflict. Every story has to have conflict. Look at all the great Seinfeld episodes. There's always some type of conflict. So I said, well, give me an example of how I would give conflict. So Bobby and Lauren, they got married. They're expecting they were going to have $30,000 from the wedding. But instead, when I followed up with them, they found out the wedding was way more expensive, and they wound up being in debt by over $10,000. And they said that being in debt, they didn't think they could buy a home. So is that conflict, right? So we got setup, then we got conflict. And then he says, you got to resolve the story. You got to resolve the story. So as an example, how do I resolve that story? So after Lauren told me that she was in debt by $10,000, I said there are so many different programs that are available in today's market. There are programs like CalHFA and GSFA where you can buy with basically no down payment, where you can actually go and get a home with little to no low money down. So I said that to Lauren, and she said, oh my gosh, I thought I needed to have $30,000 to $40,000 saved up. And I said, oh no, not in today's market. There's so many different programs where you can buy with as little as no money down. Can I arrange a call with my lender, Scott Evans? I mean, I think he's one of the best in the industry. Is he not one of the best in the industry? Yes. So I ended up arranging a call with my lender, Scott, and he ended up getting that client pre-approved. And they were able to actually get a home. They wound up buying just a few weeks ago, right? So where they were able to get the down payment finance. So it was the perfect home with no money down, and when they thought they couldn't. You see, first-time home buyers, they have a lot of different misconceptions and what it takes in order to buy a home. And as an agent, it is my job to help you through those steps. So we had setup, we had conflict, and then we had resolution. So those are the three things that you have to have in effective storytelling. And so Craig told me to tell you all, you're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4 different type of scenarios that you might have. A first-time home buyer, buyer, seller, an investor, someone moving out of state, right? So think about those stories, right? Think about those scenarios, and you want to have those stories in your satchel. So when you're talking to that situation, you're going to pull that story out of your satchel, because people don't like being told what to do. People don't like being told what to do, but you can tell them through storytelling, right? Stories say what you want to convey, so use it to your advantage if you want to be a highly effective presenter. So let's continue forward. Everything in life is scripted. Everything in life is scripted. So one of my first business coaches that I hired was this gentleman by the name of Ira Martin. And Ira was a business consultant, and he was going to help me work on my pre-approval process, right? And Ira sold insurance for a lot of professional athletes, particularly hockey players. Right? And Ira had this tragic accident where he had 32 surgeries on his leg, and they had to amputate his leg, right? And he went from the insurance sales into motivational speaking and business coaching. And one of his presentations he would talk about is, bitter. You can either be bitter or better based on what happened to him. And he was a great presenter. And so he'd always share with the group, you always hear it's about who you know. And he'd say, nope, it's about who knows you. Because when you do great work, people will talk about you and they're going to get to know you, right? And you got to have high standards. You got to be an Ivy League performer because you got to take yourself seriously. And if you don't take yourself seriously, you're not performing at a high level. So I hired him as my first business consultant, right? And he helped me create my pre-approval process. So when I met Ira, he was this real intense guy. He had this, shaved, flat top, and he said, Scott, everything in life is scripted, everything. We build out this pre-approval process. It's got to be scripted from beginning to end. It's got to be the same way every single time, so that way it's consistent. And he sat there, and we'd be writing out our pre-approval process from beginning to end. And we're writing out. He said, you got to understand, everything in life is scripted, right? You go to church, it's scripted. You go on an airplane, it's scripted, right? You go to a restaurant, it's scripted. Everyone follows a script except for these mortgage people, these real estate people. They just make up things off the top of their head. I don't understand. And for God's sakes, I said, well, let's script out our pre-approval process, right? So interestingly enough, that pre-approval process is the same process that I've had for the last 14 years. I mean, of course, I've tweaked it along the way, but it's the same process. And so I said to Ira one day that we were supposed to meet. I said, all right, I got to rearrange one of our meeting. I got this big meeting that was coming up, this major broker owner. I mean, this is back in 2010 when I said this. I had this major broker owner that was looking for a new lending relationship, right? And he said, well, what are you going to meet him with? I'm like, well, he's got 250 agents. This is going to be like the lifetime changing. This is my time to shine, right? So 2010, I'm building my practice in 250 agents. I mean, this could be it. So I said, Ira, let's just reschedule. He said, all right, perfect. So what are you going to say to them? I'm like, what do you mean, what am I going to say to them? They're just looking for the mortgage guy. He's like, no, you got to talk about your process. You got to be prepared. You got to have your points, written out. You got to cover all your angles. I said, no, we're just going to have a consultation. It's just going to be it's just going to be him, right? We're going to get to know each other. He said he wants to hire me. So we hung up, and I just wound up ignoring him. So I'll never forget, the day of the appointment. I woke at 5 o'clock in the morning. I was ready. I put, getting my suit on. Appointments at 9:30. I had the conference room set up, the Fiji water, the peppermint. I was prepared, right? I had it all ready. So he comes, broker owner comes in with his executive assistant, and my receptionist calls me and says, oh, they're here. I said, oh, perfect. Send them in the conference room, right? So I let them wait for like 6 to 7 minutes, pretending like I was super busy. So I come walking in the conference room. Hey, Scott Evans. He introduced himself to me. I'm gonna leave his name, nameless. And he introduced himself to me. Introduces his assistant. I anticipate we're gonna have small talk, right? And we sit down. And he goes, all right, tell me why I should use your services over the other 2 lenders that I just interviewed. Go. That's what he says to me. And I went into analytical shock, right? I couldn't even get my mouth open. I was like, ah! Yeah, I'm sweating. I'm turning bright red. Like, I couldn't even speak, right? And another, I couldn't get the words out of my mouth. And then 1 second felt like 4 minutes. And all I could really say is, FHA. He's like, oh, you do FHA loans. I'm like, yes. He's like, well, 10 seconds later, he stands up. He's like, pleasure to meet you. I'm going to think about what it is you told me. And he walked out. I never heard from him again, right? So later on that night, I went home, and I was laying in bed. I'm watching this, the fan twirl, and I said, I will never, ever have that happen to me again. So that is why I started writing out all my, my scripts, so that way I can have all the little innuendos that would happen in, a presentation. So when someone asks me, well, what are you? I'm a productive real estate agent here in, Riverside County. Why should I hire you? Well, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Scott Evans. I'm 18 years in the business local, and I've had the good fortune of helping over 20,000 families purchase a home all across the United States. My biggest strength to you is my 4 pillars of value, which is designed to increase an agent's sales, productivity, and efficiency. Starting with pillar number 1 is my thorough and extensive pre-approval process that operates 7 days a week, 8 a.m. to 9 p.m., 364 days a year. leaving no stone unturned and backed by a closing record second to none. Pillar number 2 is my scripted offer process. I hold the ranking for the most contracts accepted in a multiple offer situation using what I call my 7 elements of a winning offer, which is designed for agents to compete and win at the highest level. Pillar number 3 is our service advantage. It's a great honor to know that the clients that we serve have approximately 16 minutes of time invested in the mortgage process with my team, and we offer every single loan product in today's market, and our rates are highly competitive. And pillar number 4 is our growing together. I'm constantly coming up with new concepts and initiatives, helping my agents have that competitive edge, helping you sell that one extra home. Can I meet with you for coffee? See, am I articulating what my value propositions to you all, right? So if someone turns over to you and says, well, why should I use your services over another agent down the street? Can you eloquently describe that? Because life is scripted, and when you stop and think about it. In fact, my wife asked me to bring me to, asked me to go to the Justin Timberlake concert just a few weeks ago, or maybe a few months ago in San Diego County. And she asked me, well, what time do you want to get there? Well, considering Justin's it's a canned presentation, I said, why don't you go online and look at what time his set starts and how many songs he's going to sing, right? Because most people, the tickets say 8 o'clock, they're going to get there at 7:30, 7:45. And so lo and behold, she gets online, she looks at what time Justin comes on stage, 9:10, right? It's right there online, 29 songs. So I said, let's go and get dinner somewhere, 7:30 down the street from the arena. We'll have dinner, cocktail, relax. We'll show into the arena around 8:50, giving 20 minutes buffer. So what do you know? We roll into the arena around 8:55, and guess what? He hasn't even started yet. What a shocker, right? We get to our seats, 9:05, 9:10, right? Justin comes out, and all he had to do is, in his presentation, remove Las Vegas from the night before. Hello, San Diego. It's great to see you all. Do you think it was great to see everyone in Las Vegas the night before? 100%. See, every single song in perfect order. Could you imagine if he goes, hey, you know what? You're a great audience. We're going to sing another song. No, because he is a high-level performer. You all are high-level performers. It's a canned presentation, right? Everything in life is a script. It's a scripted process. Here's a script you all might have heard once or twice. Ladies and gentlemen, before we begin our descent in the San Diego area, please turn off portable and electronic devices and have them stored until we arrive at the gate. In preparation for your landing, insert city, San Diego. Be certain your seatbelt is straight up and your seatbelt is fastened. Please secure any carry-on items and store your tray tables and pass any remaining service items to the unwanted reading material to the flight attendants. Thank you. Do you think the CEO of American Airlines goes to sleep bed every single night knowing that everyone in his plane hears the safety precautions, right? Because it's a scripted process, and you all are going to start following a script because you all are high-level performers. So speaking about script, we got to rehearse. See, the more we rehearse, the more we separate ourselves, right? And I truly believe when you're a high-level performer, you got rehearsing is part of the process. So do you think I've rehearsed this just a little bit? I had to. We just created this material a week and a half ago, right? So I'm rehearsing, and I'll get better and better and better. So I got an opportunity to see Andrea Bocelli in Italy, right? It was a special event. It was unbelievable. And I'm in his hometown, and Andrea built this big, Greek theater where he's doing this performance. And oddly enough, his house is up this, hill or almost like a mountain. And the way he gets down for the performance, he gets on this black stallion, right? And he comes running down this mountain. Now, keep in mind, he's blind, right? Completely blind. And my dad is also blind as well. So he gets on the stallion. He comes down 80 miles an hour, right down the mountain into the theater. And then the horse goes back on its hind legs, right? And he gets off the horse and he waves to the crowd because it's like a canned presentation that he's doing. And he performs, right? After the event, we go to this meet and greet, and someone asks Andrea, goes, I got to ask you, Andrea, how often do you practice? You rehearse. He says every day. Every day? Well, how often? How long? He says 2 to 3 hours a day. 2 to 3 hours a day. Oh my God. He's like, yes, this is a muscle and you must train it. If anyone's ever seen his performance, and he's coming to San Diego in December, highly recommend. And if you've ever been to one of his performances, his ticket prices are extremely high. And there's any wonder, because he's a high-level performer. He's been rehearsing for 40 years straight, 7 days a week, 2 to 3 hours a day. See, the more we rehearse, the more we separate ourselves from the competition, which is why there's no one in the arena that even compares to him, right? I know this is an extreme example, but I happen to believe every single one of you all today here is a superstar. So we have to understand, to become a better superstar, we have to understand rehearsing is part of the process. Now, some of you might not realize that I suffer from a high degree of low confidence. Yes, I know you might be saying, well, why? I can't believe this guy, low confidence. Give me a break. I wouldn't believe any of that. But I got to tell you that I know I might, seem like one of the most confident guy up here, but it's because I practice, right? And it increases confidence. So when you're going to talk to a buyer and seller, if you know your opening lines, if you know your process well, right? You know your value propositions. And if you suffer from low confidence, like I do, right, it will not show to the prospect. But if you don't practice, if you don't try to get better, if you don't if you go in there and not rehearse, you're going to be, and you're underconfident, it's going to show, right? So you're not going to be able to perform. And in fact, before I came in here today, I was doing my affirmations. This will be my best presentation yet. This will be my best presentation yet, right? Best presentation yet, best presentation yet. And see, for those that are superstars like Andrea Bocelli, right? He suffers from, he's also very underconfident, and he suffers from stage fright. And you wouldn't know that if you saw him, but because he practices and he rehearses. See, the more we rehearse, the more we separate ourselves, and the more we increase our confidence levels to perform at the absolute highest level. That's part of our job, right? Let me tell you what my goal is. My goal is to rehearse and practice this material so much that you can say, oh my God, that was one of the best presentations I went to, right? So I can separate myself from the competition. You've all gone and see other loan officers speak, right? Now, nothing against them, right? And I'm not gonna ask you a show of hands, but am I separating myself? 100%. And are you separating yourself from the competition, right? And the way we do that is we gotta rehearse. You gotta know your lines. You gotta understand it. It's a scripted process, right? You rehearse your lines and you get better and better and better. And the goal is to separate yourself from the competition. It's not that complicated. So speaking of rehearsing, I heard a great one about Albert Einstein. See, Albert Einstein would do this presentation every Saturday to this university of 300 mad scientists. And every Saturday for 2 years straight, he would say the same presentation. And he woke up one day and said, I'm sick and tired of doing this presentation over and over and over. And his driver shows up, and oddly enough, his driver looks exactly like him. The same nose, same hair. It's wild. And he tells the driver, I got to tell you something. I'm so tired of, doing this presentation over and over and over again. And it's the same words. And the driver says, I know. I could say this thing verbatim. And Einstein, being the smart guy that he says, well, why don't we change, places? You be me. I'll put your clothes and I'll be the driver. Let's change outfits. So they change outfits. They get and roll up to the university. So of course the perceived Einstein goes on stage, and Einstein goes and sits in the audience. So the perceived Einstein is doing the presentation in front of the 300 mad scientists. 5 minutes go by, 10 minutes go by, 15, 20 minutes. And on the 20th minute, one of the scientists stood up and asked probably one of the most difficult questions anyone could have ever asked. And the whole room went completely silent. The perceived Einstein thought about it for a second and says, sir, your question is so simple, I'm going to let my driver answer it. But in winning the buyer presentation part 2, we talked about increasing value, right? Increasing value. So in order to go into buyer presentation and get it signed easily, we got to talk about some of the value. So I said to myself, why don't I break it down for you all? So in your presentation, we have, a nice acronym, right, for value. So V stands for varies, right? Value varies amongst people. So Bridget might walk into a Mercedes dealership and might find value in, a Mercedes, right? She loved that car, right? Mike might find value in a BMW, right? He might find value in that car. And Steve could easily buy both cars, and get either car, but he might find value in a Honda, right? So whether it's, you might find value in one or two different cars, but do we agree value varies amongst people? But watch this. A stands for all. Everyone wants to feel important, right? So Bridget, when she goes into the Mercedes dealership, she wants to feel important. Mike, when he goes into the BMW dealership, he equally wants to feel important. And Steve, when he goes into Honda dealership, he equally wants to feel important. So which simply means whether someone's buying a $300,000 condo, right, $1 million home, or $3 million penthouse, everyone wants to feel important. So here's the question. When was the last time in your buyer presentation you told the customer these 5 magic words? And those words are, you are important to me. You are important to me. Do you think in your buyer presentation telling a client that they're important to you? See, you all are my customer and you all are important to me, right? So we actually started incorporating this into our presentations and ending our buyer consultations with the client that they are important to us. I mean, see, folks, they see you on Facebook, right? They see you maybe selling that $1.8 million home, that $1 million home, and then they're meeting with you, and maybe they feel a little underconfident in the home that they're buying, right? So you got to make them feel important to you, right? That's one way to increase our value to the customer. Next letter is L. L stands for love, because people love their money, all right? Oh, Scott, that's the root of all evil. I mean, give me a break. People love their money, right? Steve, will you give me $1,000? No. Why? Because he loves his money. I'll give you an example. Who here wants to overpay for goods and services? Anyone want to overpay? Who wants to underpay for goods and services, right? It's because people love their money. So if we realize and understand that, right, that people love their money, when we want to show them how we can help them save money. See, per NAR, 84% of home buyers find value in an agent's negotiating skills. So in your buyer presentation, are you walking them through your negotiation process? Something to consider. And one thing I went through about 55 different buyer presentations when I was creating our Winning the Buyer Presentation Part 1, right? And I saw that there was no one that really eloquently went into their negotiation strategies with their buyer. Oh, you're making an offer. You found a home, now we're going to make an offer, right? It was so passive. So we got to understand that people love their money, so we need to show them how we can help save them money. U stands for unique. Unique. What is your unique services or unique value propositions? Do you have any unique value propositions? And we're going to talk about 4 UVPs in today's presentation that you all will walk away with to the buyer. And then E. E stands for experience. People place value on experiences. About 2 weeks ago, I had a past client that called me up and said, Scott, he just closed on the transaction. He goes, look, I got to tell you, I keep coming back to you because you're the experience working with you and your team. It's so easy. I've done 3 to 4, now it's my 4th loan in the last 6 years with you, and you just make it such a great experience. See, if the experience was a bad experience, he would not coming back. So we got to also focus on the experience with the customer. And see, I get that. When you guys have a lead, right, what's the experience with the follow-up from our team, right? Oh, I mean, isn't it frustrating? What happened with that client? Where's the follow-up back to you of where we're going, what's going on with that particular lead, right? So we have to make a better job and making a better experience for all you because people place value on the experience. So another way that we can increase our presentation is we can add professionalism in our presentation. So when I was 26 years old, I got into the mortgage industry. And my first mentor was this guy, Ted Phillips. And Ted said to me, I said to Ted, I want to be a strong loan officer. What do you suggest? He said, well, you got to learn how to increase your professionalism. All right. How do I increase my professionalism? He said, number one, your appearance. All right, your appearance. Well, how do you appear to people? I said, well, all right, my appearance. Well, tell me, how do I appear? He's like, your suit looks like you're from Salvation Army, for God's sakes. You gotta get a better suit. I'm like, well, I just started off in the mortgage industry. I don't have money. He's like, well, clean yourself up a little better. Better. If you can't take yourself, how are you gonna be able to take care of the customer? So appearance is number one. All right, I wrote that down. Appearance, number one. And number two, he said choice of words. Your choice of words. You got to have better choice of words. Like, what do I do? He said, you got to read books. All right, well, can I listen to some audiobooks? He said, no audiobooks. You got to read because audiobooks are not going to help you with your vocabulary. All right, well, what do you suggest? He said, just read anything, as long as there's more words than pictures. So I wrote that down. All right, read. So I started becoming an avid reader and reading a book a month. And then he said, you got to have versatility, right? Versatility. Well, you got to add meaningful topics to the conversation. You got to be a little bit more well-rounded. So, well, how do I do that? He said, travel. Like, I just got in the mortgage industry. I can't afford to travel. He said, well, learn about people that travel. So I said, learn about other countries, other foods, other cultures. You got to be more well-rounded. So I wrote down versatility. You got to be more well-rounded. And then he said, preparedness. You got to be prepared. I said, what do you mean by that? He says, when he said, at any given moment, someone could say, I want to purchase a home and I would like to get a loan from you. Are you prepared? Or do you have everything ready? He said, the old Marcus Aurelius line, hard work meets opportunity equals luck, right? You got to have hard work. You got to have the opportunity. You got to be prepared for the opportunity. And, if we think about it, some of the great, athletes, Tom Brady. Tom Brady just had a roast. Anyone see that roast? I mean, it was intense to say the least, right? It was an interesting roast. But if you think about Tom Brady, he was the second, third string quarterback for the New England Patriots. First string quarterback, Drew Bledsoe, gets injured, right? Tom Brady comes walking on the field, and he was prepared because he had his opportunity, right? And see, we can't cheat that. You all could walk out of here after this presentation, sit down at the bar. Someone could sit down next to you and say, what do you do? Oh, I'm a real estate agent. Oh, I was actually looking to purchase a home. Why should I use you over the other agent down the street, right? You got to be prepared for that opportunity, right? And then he said to me, you got to be an ultimate professional, always be punctual. Always be punctual. So I wrote down, I'm 26 years old, and I said, all right, I'm going to always be punctual. He said, you should always be punctual. Never be late. Oh, never be late, all right. He said, the only time you can be late. I'm like, oh, only time I can be late. He's like, the only time you can be late is death, right? Only time I can be late is death. So I remember that. So 26 years old, I was always on time because you got to always be on time. There's no exceptions, right? You just look messy, right? You're a mess. And if you can't conduct yourself, right, how can you conduct yourself for other people? And I've been on time all the time, for years until I got married. Now, my wife has done a pretty good job. I mean, we went from an hour and a half down to 55 minutes, right? No, I'm only teasing. My wife and I, we do have a great relationship. We actually made a decision, we'll never go to bed mad at each other, right? I mean, we haven't slept since Friday, so. But, just kidding. But always be on time, always be on time. So about a year ago, I started realizing I couldn't see the back of a medicine bottle, right? I mean, I'm 44 years old, and I guess around 42 years old, your eye muscles start, start getting worse, right? So I went into, for an eye exam, right? I'm expecting to go get glasses, right? I had 20/20 vision. So I come in and, routine eye exam, and, they had you close one eye and start reading. They start taking pictures and stuff, and, I'm getting shot up all over the place. It was crazy. So I'm in the waiting room, and the doctor comes in with some charts, and she says, I gotta tell you something. So I'm prepared. She's gonna tell me I got glasses. I gotta get glasses. She goes, you got a hole in your eye. I'm like, a hole in my, and so she's showing, the charts and stuff, and I'm looking, I'm like, oh yeah, I can see the hole, right? And so she goes, well, what do you suggest? She goes, you got to go see a specialist. I'm like, all right, I got to see a specialist. You got someone you recommend? Here's the name and a number. So I go out, make a phone call, right? They can see me next Wednesday. So I go back in, I'm like, all right, they can see me next Wednesday. She's like, oh no, you got to go now. I'm like, I got to go now? My anxiety starts going up, right? So she steps out, makes a phone call, right? Walks back in. Good news, I got you an appointment at 2 o'clock. So I came in for an eye exam. Now I got to go see a retina, like a specialist. So I'm driving over there. Scale from 1 to 10. Where's my anxiety? 10. Through the roof. It's like a 14, right? For God's sakes. So I come into the waiting room. Gentleman walks in. He says, Mr. Evans. I said, yes. He said, my name is Patrick. It's great to meet you. I want to first let you know that you're in the right place. So I'm going to walk you through my process from beginning to end so you know exactly what to expect. You see, you're in the first room, and what we're going to do is we're going to get you dilated. Have you ever been dilated before? I said, no, I haven't. He said, it's okay. We're going to have some fun. We're going to look like a werewolf. We'll look like we're werewolves together. So he dilates me, and now we look like werewolves, right? So he goes, all right, we're going to go to the second room. And what we're going to do here is we're going to put some gel in your eye, right? And so they put some gel in my eye. He goes, now you're going to see some blue, green, red, all these different colors. But don't worry, right? It's what we call normal, right? So I see all these different colors. And I had to stop him. I said, I got to ask, how many times do you do this? He's like, 6 to 7 times. I said, you know your lines line by line. He said, 100%. See, he had a clear, defined process. So my anxiety level went from a 14 down to a 3, right? Because what he was doing, he was going over a clear, defined process, and it was laced what we call anticipatory service. He was telling me what we're going to be doing and experiencing before we're experiencing it, right? So when you're selling a home to a buyer or seller, right, are there things they're constantly going to be experiencing? 100%. So do we want to go over that with the buyer each and every time? Because, right, do we agree when you're buying a house, it's a scary process, right? But if you have clear, defined process laced with anticipatory service, it calms the nerves of the prospect, right? So here I am at a level 3, right? He leaves and the doctor comes in. And now they're taking photos, bam, bam, shot, shot. I'm getting like beat up, seeing all these different colors. And the doctor walks in and he says, all right, how are you feeling? I said, I'm a little bit nervous. He goes, I got to tell you, I got to tell you something. You're in the right place. Because the truth of the matter is what happens is, somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 to 22% of people come in here and they got a hole in the eye. And it's just anatomy. I've been doing this for over 32 years, and this is what I specialize in. And what we're going to do is we're going to pull out this little laser. We're going to zap that one eye, and it's going to close that hole just like that. You got 12, 13, 14 seconds? And I said, oh, yeah, I got 14 seconds. I go, well, what's the success rate? The success rate, 100%. What they were doing, and he's going through this canned script, this canned presentation, right? He's going through these flip charts and showing me. See, he had such a process that was filled with anticipatory service. So they zapped me and I'm done. So I went in there for a follow-up appointment, and I come walking in, I see Patrick, and I say, Patrick, I got to tell you something. I do presentations now and then for real estate agents, and you're in my presentation because you did such a great job, with anticipatory service, right? And it calmed my nervous system. And they also, at that office, had defining moments. And what are defining moments? See, they were asking me questions about myself. Am I married? Do I have kids? Right? So I got a postcard in the mail that said, thank you for your time. All the best for your children, Carter, London, and Logan. Folks, your process from beginning to end should adds value to your buyer presentation. And you should be able to clearly define it and lace it with anticipatory service and look for those defining moments. You got a married couple. They got kids, right? What sports are they into? Oh, they're into basketball. Send them a book on Amazon, a Michael Jordan book. On Amazon, it's delivered next day, $9.99. They open it the following day. It's from you. Is that winning or what? So, but if you can't create defining moments, if you don't have a set process, And the only way you can have a set process, right, is if it's scripted. And if it's scripted, right, everything in life is scripted. And when it's scripted, you got to rehearse it 100%. See how this all connects, right? And you thought I was going to talk about buyer-broker agreements, yeah? No, but we're going to jump into that in just a moment. But before we jump into that, I wanted to first go into some unique value propositions. Every customer has pain, and if you can deliver a solution to the customer's pain, you will always have a customer. So, pillar number one in my pre-approval process, right? I said when an agent is looking to work with a buyer, right? What are some challenges? Could they get declined in the process? So if you think my first pillar of value is my 7-day week, 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. pre-approval process, right? We're only closed Christmas Day. We pre-underwrite every client up front, and we're celebrating 14 years of zero decline rate. See, pain point, solution. What's another challenge? Are there multiple offers in today's market? You find you're showing a buyer the perfect home. They want to make an offer, right? Another pain point is the offer doesn't get accepted. So pillar number 2 is my scripted offer process, which I hold the ranking for the most contracts accepted in a multiple offer situation using what I call my 7 elements of a winning offer. Pain, solution. What are some pain points that buyers are experiencing? So per NAR, the first pain point that buyers have is the home search process. The home search process. So what are you doing differently in the home search process? Well, I look on the MLS just like everyone else, right? So here's the question. Per NAR and per the market, home buyers, the pain point that they have is home search. So do you think it would be important to find a creative way of where you can find homes that are not on the market? It should be tied into your opening lines in your presentation, right? Number two is negotiating techniques. Per NAR, 84% of home buyers find value in an agent's negotiating skills. So, what are your negotiation techniques? We're going to walk through some negotiation techniques in our scripted offer process and this presentation, right? Because if you can't demonstrate a unique value proposition for you of how you can help that client get the home that they want or negotiate better terms, what separates you from the agent down the street? Number 3, all right, here, let's assume for a second. Mike, right? You're an agent. You want to buy a home in Salt Lake City, right? I'm going to be your agent. So he comes and sits down. So thank you so much, Mike, for being here today. It's a great honor. I look forward to being your real estate agent. Allow me to tell you what I do a bit differently compared to the other agents in Salt Lake City. You see, in Salt Lake, we had 4 months of inventory. And what that simply means is we're in a transitional market. What a transitional market means is there could be homes that there are multiple offers, but then there could be homes that have been sitting on the market for 2 to 3 months. See, either way, when there's multiple offers, I'm going to show you how we eliminate the competition. And the homes that have been on the market for a period of time, I'm going to show you how we negotiate better terms or better price. Let me walk you through my winning offer process. How does that sound, right? See, would you want to work with that agent if you all were buying a home in Salt Lake City? 100%. See, you want to talk with authority. So the third pain point that we're going to go over is interest rates. Are interest rates still a pain point that buyers have? 100%. So when a home buyer wants to buy a home, are they calling you or are they calling me? They're calling you guys first the majority of the time. So how are you handling that objection? Oh, like to buy a home, but interest rates are too high, right? Well, what's an agent's response? Oh, you can marry the home, date the rate. That's not handling the objection, right? Or here's this, I want to buy a home, but interest rates are too high, right? Agent, I know. That's the objection. That's how they handle the objection. That's not handling. Or you could always refinance. That's not handling the objection. Oh yeah, interest rates are a bit higher, but you see, when you work with me, you don't have to pay current market interest rates. See, what I do is I negotiate with the seller and get a credit from the seller. And we take that credit, your lender will take that credit and buy down your interest rate into the 3, 4s, or the 5s. I mean, would you like to learn more? See, and the buyer says, oh, you can do that? Yes, I do it every single day. You see, let's say you and your wife wanted to find a perfect home, $700,000. I'll negotiate a 2% credit coming back from the seller, which is $14,000. We'll take that $14,000 and your lender will buy down your interest rate somewhere in the fours, right? Now you have a below market interest rate and you probably got a better deal on that home, not waiting in the line with 25 others that wanted to buy that home. See, well, why would a seller do that? See, a seller would do that because they're more motivated in today's market. Not to mention, I have my 7 elements of a winning offer, which gives the seller more speed and execution, so they're confident in taking our offer over competing offers, because we do things very quickly, right? Giving the seller certainty, and I do this every day. Is that handling the buyer's objection? 100%. See, an agent's negotiating skills can determine a home buyer's interest rate. An agent's negotiating skills can determine a home buyer's interest rate. You guys, you have to put that right here. So I had a broker owner that called me the other day, and she says, an agent doesn't determine the buyer's interest rate. You do. You're the loan officer. I said, well, let me ask you a question. You ever heard of these temporary mortgage rate buydowns? She said, of course, I've been in the business for 40 years. I got 100 agents that work for me. I said, well, question, who pays for those temporary buydowns? She said, well, anybody can pay for them. I said, well, I don't know about that. Hold on. The seller pays for them. The buyer can't pay for them. Your real estate agents that work for you can pay for them. Do they want to pay for them? Oh, no, they don't want to pay for them. I said, all right, you're working with the buyer that found the perfect home, right? But the buyer needs to have a lower monthly payment, right, in order to buy that home. Who's the one who pulls out the sales contract? Is that you or is that me? She said, or your agents pull the sales contract, or is that me? She said, my agents pull out the sales contract. Perfect. Who's the one who fills in the sales price? Is it your agents or is that me? My agents fill in the sales price. All right. Right. Now, if we want to get a credit from the seller, right, who puts that in the contract? Is that your agents or is that me? She said, my agents put that in this contract. Perfect. Right. Now you send the offer over. The listing agent calls you up and they're negotiating. Right. Are they negotiating with you? Or are they negotiating with me? They're negotiating with my agents. All right, perfect. Your agents handle the negotiations. So now I have an executed contract. You send it over to me. I take that executed contract. I take that credit that your agent just negotiated. We got them a below market interest rate, right? A below market payment, right? So isn't your agent's negotiating skills that determine the home buyer's interest rate? 100%, right? So why aren't you all using that as a value proposition? We have to. So my buyer doesn't, my buyers don't pay for, current market interest rates. Well, what does that mean? See, well, what I do is I negotiate with the sellers all the time, and we get a credit from the seller, and we take that credit and we buy down your interest rate, so you don't have to, you get a below market interest rate and below market payment, right? Can I show you how I do that? So the fourth value proposition that we have is knowledge. National Association of Realtors has claimed that there's a lack of knowledge out there in the industry for home buyers. And in fact, there's a lack of knowledge for agents. It's an all-time high. Did you all realize that 50% of all mortgage applications in 2023 were to first-time home buyers? If you would have called that, right, there's no way we would have been able to call that. Everyone goes, oh, with home prices today and affordability, first-time home buyers are being, priced out of the market. BS. Right? 45% of the transactions that close right now are to first-time home buyers. So are you all up to date on all the different programs out there? CalHFA, GSFA, all the different various programs that are available, right? If you'd like to learn more, we could set up a call and we can go over the different programs together. So speaking of curing the pain, right? I want to share some of the medical advice I just got. It's some of the best medical advice that I just recently received. But you guys, you all have to pay attention to this, right? You got to pay attention. See, the doctor said, if you're ever experiencing joint pain, it's because your hand holding at the lit end. Got it? Holding the lit end. All right, joint pain. All right, moving right along. All right, now let's dive into mastering the buyer-broker agreement. Mastering the buyer-broker agreement. I was supposed to say that last joke serious, but I couldn't. It's like, all right. So we're going to go over the buyer-broker agreement, and then we're going to wrap up. So there's still a lot of, let's say, lack of clarity in the NAR settlement, right? And people are always asking me all the time, all the, the details of everything. And I always tell them, I'm a facts and figures type of guy, right? A facts and figures. I'm not going to go over anything until they're facts. But the one thing that we can rest assured on is that it would appear that a buyer or broker agreement is going to become, standard, right? And if it doesn't happen, right? Well, let me back up. That's why I'm always going into right now presentation skills. I mean, worst case scenario, best case scenario, right, is a buyer broker agreement doesn't go into effect. Well, we all learn together, are still, and myself included, about our presentation skills. So, right, I'm not going to speculate on all the compensation, all that type of stuff, because it's still unclear. Because truth of the matter is, August 17th could come around and they could extend this again, right? So I'm not going to speculate on any of that stuff today, but we are going to talk about mastering the buyer-broker agreement. So the first thing that I wrote down is to strengthen your presentation skills. When you strengthen your presentation skills, you're going to succeed at a high level. So I really believe that a lot of the part-timers that are in our industry are going to get squeezed out when this rolls out, right? And if you think about it, that's why they say a lot of part-timers don't list real estate. They don't list properties, right? Because they don't have the presentation skills. Because let's be honest, right? It's going to be a hiring process that's going to be taking place. People are going to be, are going to be interviewing you all and signing a buyer broker agreement. So no matter what, you're going to win, right? But in order to win further, right? Because I think if you applied some of the stuff that we're going to be going over today, right, it's going to help you out with your presentation skills. So what I wrote down, in essence, to provide even more value to you all, is we created a buyer presentation script that we are going to go over today. It's 3 pages that we're going to walk through. So I'm going to pretend that I'm the agent, and we'll give as an example. Like, let's assume a first-time home buyer comes in. So Steve walks in and sits down. So this is going to be my first presentation with a first-time home buyer. So we sit down. So Steve, so you're a first-time home buyer, aren't you?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I work with a lot of first-time home buyers. In fact, 50% of the business that I do is working with first-time home buyers. So I want to thank you first and foremost for the opportunity. So I recently worked with such a great couple, newlywed couple. They were Bobby and Lauren. See, this plays back to the story in the beginning. Bobby and Lauren, they just graduated college, and they were getting into their respective fields. Bobby was going to become going into law, and Lauren was a nurse practitioner. And see, a lot of first-time homebuyers think they need a lot more money than they need to buy a home. So I understand that, and I respect that. So I said to the couple as they were getting married in a couple months, and they wanted me to follow up with them after they got married. And when I followed up with Lauren, the wife, the newlywed, said that their wedding didn't go as planned. They're expecting about $30,000 from the wedding, but instead they're now in debt by over $10,000, and they were really heartbroken. So I said to them, in today's market, there's so many wonderful programs that are out there, allowing first-time home buyers to really buy a home, whether you have the down payment or not. And as a first-time home buyer, there's all these down payment assistance programs such as CalHAFA and other various programs. So I explained that to Lauren, and she was super excited, and she wanted to know more. So I connected her with my loan officer, Scott Evans, and he ended up getting them pre-approved one of those great programs, and they ended up buying a home, one of the first-time home buyer programs. And sometimes we think we need more than we actually need. So I want to say that and help you demystify that. So if you notice, we're going to go into the first page of the script. So we first tell a story. Then we go, thank you for coming in today. Allow me to give you a little bit of background. My name is Scott Evans. I'm 18 years in the real estate agent industry locally, and I help families find their perfect home, second home, or investment properties through my unique process. So we're going to start with a simple consultation, which typically takes about 30 minutes, and I will cover the home buying process with you and how I search for properties on your behalf, whether on the market, on the MLS or not. I will cover my negotiation techniques that are far more different than anyone else in the industry, designed and proven to get you better price, better terms, or even eliminate the buyer competition should we experience a multiple offer situation. See, my goal, common ground, My goal is to find you the right home, simplify the process, and make it stress-free for you and your family. See, I work side by side with my network of trusted third-party companies, right, that you will need during the home process, such as home inspector, mortgage lender, insurance agent, escrow and title companies. See, I want to let you know, Steve, that I operate 7 days a week, which gives you peace of mind, knowing whenever you have questions throughout the process, I am here for you and your family. A map that will illustrate the process and the level of service that you can anticipate throughout each step. So we're going to skip 2 pages and we're going to go through the map that we've created, the journey map. So this can be co-branded for you all, modified, changed, whatever you would like to do, right? You guys can keep this script, you can practice it, throw it away, whatever you want. I just want to provide as much value to all of you. So now we're in the initial consultation. So I'm excited for the next step of the process to get you pre-approved. You see, when you get pre-approved with the right loan officer, what happens is you end up knowing all the numbers, you know what your affordability is, and you know all the cash that you'll need to buy a home, which will then ultimately let us know what home search we should create for you to purchase. So I use Scott Evans and his team, and they're the #1 direct lender in the state of California, and they operate 7 days a week just like I do. So whatever is best for you, we can arrange a time for you to call. 8 p.m. on a Saturday, 10 o'clock on a Sunday. They're available 7 days a week, 364 days a year from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. So once we have you pre-approved, we're going to start the home search. See, my goal is to help you find the right home. Those that came to Winning Buyer Presentation Part 2, you remember what's most important to a buyer? Finding the right home is number 1. Number 2, affordable payment and terms. You remember that came. And number 3 was price. So price is not number 1. The right home for themselves and their family is number 1. So my goal is to help you find the right home. And what's interesting about my journey together is that when you know it's the right home, right, it's an emotional process. So we might be in the 2nd or 3rd bedroom and you might say, this is the home that I want. See, I'm going to be with you from start to finish, side by side. And so once we end up finding the right home, what we're going to do is we're going to make an offer. And this is where I really shine. So you see, my negotiation techniques and strategies are designed and proven to eliminate the buyer competition should we be up against multiple offer situation, or help you get better terms or better price. Because we're in a seller's market, we will most likely experience a multiple offer situation. And when the home has been on the market for a while, right, it's still my job to get you the best price and best terms. So let me show you how we do this. So now we're going to flip over to our winning offer script, right, which is on the next page. So let's go over our winning offer script together. My winning offer script. So I'm going to articulate to you my winning offer process, right, which will articulate my negotiating skills and techniques. So when you're getting a mortgage loan, right, the loan officer that's involved in the process is super important, which why I use Scott Evans. He's incorporated into my process. So step number 1, this winning offer process dates back to 2010 when I was buying my first home, right? And I remember, clearly when I wanted to buy my first home, I went over to the agent, right? And the agent went to a listing agent that was holding open house, and there's 23 offers on that property, right? Not what you want to hear when you're competitive, right? Who here is competitive, right? So I knew I needed to structure terms that would pierce, a seller, and it didn't include a Dear John letter, right? And I was using an FHA loan, and FHA loan in 2010, it was like having a disease, right? That was like all the myths and rumors circulating about that particular product, even it is today. So this was the process that I used to get that home. And now, of course, I've tweaked this, along the way, but this has been tried, tested, and true. So now, for those that are new to me, this is where we get a little uncomfortable, right? Because winning is uncomfortable. Tim Grover has some of the greatest lines. Winning makes you different, and different scares people, right? So who here likes to win at a high level, right? Right? So I wrote out my 7 steps and put it in your language. So now it's your value proposition for you to the buyer to help them get the home. So step number 1 in my winning offer process is offer price. So when you find the right home, we're going to go back to my office, we're going to run a CMA and look at past sales, and together collectively, we're going to come up with the best offer price. Step number 2 of my winning offer process is inspection period. See, the inspection period is known as the decision-making period. See, what that means is people are going to fly in from Northern California, and they're going to come into town during the inspection period and decide if they want the home. People are going to go into contract and vet out the schools, and then people are going to go into contract, get a home inspection and appraisal if needed, right? See, my inspector that's ready is on standby and is able to complete that inspection within 5 days. And this is for you guys, your inspector, not my inspector, you guys, your inspector. And I had an agent that came into me, asked me, well, what if my inspector can't get the inspection done within the 5 days? Folks, right? What do? You need to go find an inspector that will comply with your timelines, because this is your value proposition to the client to get the home, right? So we need to have high levels of standards. So back here. So what I recommend is going 5 days, right? So makes sense so far what I'm going over, right? 5 days on inspection period. Step number 3 of our offer price is the loan approval period. See, the loan approval period is telling the seller how long they need to wait till they can start packing their home. See, most of my competition, see what they do is they might have 17 days or 15 days on loan approval period. See, what I want to do is, in essence, to win is we like to keep our loan approval period, my loan officer, Scott Evans, what he does is once he pre-approves the clients, he puts in writing that we can waive your loan approval contingencies, right? So let's pretend for a second that you have 3 offers on the table. Offer number 1, they're at $800,000 price point with a 17-day loan contingency. Offer number 2, also at $800,000 price point at a 21-day loan contingency. And then offer number 3 is at a 5-day inspection period and a no loan contingencies. Who are you going to choose? Number 3, right? So we have to have the most aggressive offer in the hat. Right? Now, condos, we recommend initially having a 5-day loan contingency because the HOA is the one thing that we don't control, right? We can't control that on the timeframes. We do look at the condo to see if it's on a Fannie Mae approval list. If it does have a Fannie Mae approval, we can recommend waiving the loan contingencies because a lot of people are not actually looking if the condo is actually Fannie Mae approved. When it is Fannie Mae approved, it's called a PERS approval. Right? We don't need any HOA documents, right? So as you would agree, that's the one thing that's out of our control. So condos, we recommend 5 days. So I am committing to you all having everything done within that 5 days, right? If I was at 15 days on timeframes, would that be any of value to you? Not at all. You should throw me out of the room, right? It's not a unique value proposition. So question, if I'm committing to you all having stuff done, having 5-day inspection contingencies, pre-underwriting that file, right? So you can waive the contingencies. If I'm committing this to you, why aren't you committing this to the buyer? Why? And the thing is, 70% of the room will not write these timelines. I swear to God, I see offers all the time. And I'm telling you to write these offers, and then we say the offer get written out there, not following the strategies. So this is a leverage point for you in your negotiation tactics, right? By either eliminating the buyer competition or getting the buyer better terms. I mean, yesterday I just got a call from an agent, right? With the highest offer they selected, which wasn't us, and it was like over 50 grand higher. And guess what? 14 days later, she's calling me back, right? There's 14 offers, and now the seller just got burned because they selected the right offer price, only to have all the 14 days, right? The appraisal wasn't even ordered, right? So they selected our offer this morning, right? 10-day close, 5-day inspection, no loan, no appraisal, right? Because they wanted certainty. So it's, sometimes we win on those price points where that high, but as a top listing agent, right? Your reputational line. So now that listing agent came back, and now her reputation is being tarnished because she didn't advise on selecting the right offer that's going to close and fund successfully. So that's what she told me. She's like, I need to pick the one that's going to close and fund successfully. Out of all 14, ours is what she chose because we had such aggressive timelines. So step number 4 of our winning offer process is waiving appraisal contingency. See, a lot of a lot of agents and buyers have been waiving appraisal contingencies since 2020, but when the appraisal comes low, they had to bring in the difference. And that's not what I do when working with Scott Evans. What we do is we waive the appraisal contingency safely. And what do I mean by safely? See, what we're going to do is they're committed to getting that appraisal back within the 5-day contingency period so you can make a decision. If the appraisal comes in low, one of 4 things could happen, right? The first thing is Scott and his team could look at restructuring the loan. If we can't do that, you could look at bringing in the funds, the difference, right? But you need the data in order to make the decision, right? You could try to renegotiate the offer, right? Or we cancel due to the contingency timeframes, right? Because you're making a decision. So this is my commitment to you because my appraisers are committed to getting their appraisal completed within the 5 days, right? You remember we had that appraisal. He was going out there, and then what happened? He wasn't able to get into the home, get into that home that day, but he was committed to getting this appraisal that day. And we got it back later on within the 5-day inspection contingency, right? And what happened? Appraisal there. That's what we needed. So just like your inspector needs to hit the timelines for you, for your value proposition, those appraisers, we have 3 appraisers do all of our appraisals in San Diego, in Riverside, et cetera. They're committed to getting those appraisals back in 2 to 3 days, having some buffer in that process so your buyer can make a decision and all of you can have that appraisal back within that inspection period. Got it? Makes sense so far? So step number 4. Step number 5 of our winning an offer process, we recommend closing in 10 days. See, speed is a weapon. 37% of Scott Evans' team closes in 10 days, right? This is what we do. You're not gonna throw me this curveball. Oh my God, a 10-day close, what am I gonna do? We are prepared for it. We want you to do it. I mean, my perfect scenario would each and every one of you would go write a 10-day close. I mean, that would make an incredible July, right? I want you to do it. But sometimes we listen to the listing agent too much in a multiple offer situation. So I had someone, FHA buyer, 500,000 price point, right? We're doing a 10-day close, 5-day inspection, no loan, no appraisal. Makes an offer, calls listing agent like, oh, we don't want a 10-day close. 45 days is fine. She calls me back, Scott, great news. I talked to the listing agent. We don't need to close in 10 days. Well, what'd they say? Like, oh, 45 days. You don't understand. We're an FHA buyer at 500,000 price point, right? We need to use our 10-day close, 5-day inspection. But they said, we don't need it. We have to have the strongest offer in the hat. And that listing agent knew me, right? So then they submitted a 10-day close, 5-day inspection, no loan, no appraisal, and I get a call the next day from the listing agent. Scott, don't take this the wrong way, but we're choosing your offer over me telling them not to. When you tell them not to, I know you do a great job, but it's an FHA buyer against an all-cash offer. Well, why do you think they took our offer? Well, he goes, oh, there's a war in Europe, and interest rates have been going up, and I want my money now, right? 10-day close. It was a vacant home. Who wants to make a mortgage payment on a vacant home? 10-day close. They did a 10-day close with a 35-day rent back, right? So use the rent back in your scenario. We need to have the most aggressive offer in the hat. Worst case is they select your offer and counter you back, right? So 10-day close, 5-day inspection, no loan, no appraisal. And then step number 6 of our winning offer process. See, what I do is because you're getting mortgage financing, what I do is I text my lender, Scott Evans, the cell phone, or the listing agent's phone number, right? And he calls personally because the idea is, right, we want to win. It's a new transaction for you all. It's a new transaction for me, right? I make those calls. Claudia, I make those phone calls, right? And here's an example of the call, right? So Claudia, I just see that Sonia put an offer on your great listing. I know we can't talk about price, but we can talk about terms. So I want to cover all the terms that Sonia wrote on the particular offer. So I see that she wrote an $800,000 offer, a 5-day inspection contingency, waived the loan, waived the appraisal with a 10-day closing. So here's what I want to validate to you. Right? I can meet all those timelines written in that offer that she just sent over. So I'm giving my 100% assurance that we hit those timelines. So here's the question. I know we can't talk about price, but we can talk about terms. Are there any other offers that have better terms? And very rarely are there when you're at a 10-day close with a 5-day inspection. And she actually, what happened is she goes, well, there is an offer that has better terms. Well, what are they? It was a cash offer. I'm like, well, what are the terms? 7-day inspection contingency, we're at 5. Oh, I never thought about that. Yeah. So they chose our offer, right, out of comparison to that cash offer. Because guess what? The cash offer wrote a 30-day close, right? It was a vacant home. 10-day close, 5-day inspection, no loan, no appraisal. And step number 7 is I ask you to copy me on the offer, which I'm going to put in writing that we will meet all the timelines written in the offer. So I'm putting my reputation to not only to you all as the buyer's agent, to the listing agent, that we will meet all the timelines. And then I give 7 additional reasons why the seller should accept our offers. Those are the 7 steps of a winning offer process, right? If you can digest this, put it in your own words, practice this, right? It's a value proposition for you for getting the client to home. So an agent said to me just the other day, well, what happens if another agent puts the exact same terms? Well, you know, it's great for me because not everyone is doing these timelines. And in fact, we actually had a situation where there's 5 offers that went out, or there's 5 offers on the property, and the listing agent called me and goes, Scott, well, actually I called them because there was 3 offers that we were the loan officer for. And she goes, well, Scott, you got 3 offers that are here that are using you. Which one do you think we should take? Well, whichever one is using the 7 elements of winning offer. Well, what's that? The 10-day close, a 5-day inspection, no loan and no appraisal. She's like, that's exactly which one we're going to take. So that's which one won. And she goes to me, she's like, why do you think the other 2 didn't use those same timelines? And I said, if you can answer that question, you know, we'll split the money, because I don't know. So that's the question for you all that are here, right? The decision that you have to make, right? It's a way to be able to win consistently for your clients. So the balance of that home journey process, we're not going to go through, right? You guys can digest it and go through it at another time. And a copy of all of this, of course, will be emailed to you. We can co-brand it and create it for you. But let's go back to page number 3 of the buyer presentation. So Steve, my buyer-broker agreement is very important to us because it formalizes my fiduciary responsibility to you, obligating me to you to ensuring that I will do everything in my power to find you the perfect home and serve your best interests. Because of this agreement, I only commit to a select number of clients on a monthly basis in order to give each and every client 100% of my attention and time. So I understand that you have choices, but rest assured that each client that I serve, right, has given me high reviews and also recommends me to their family and friends, and I aim to be your agent for life. So now present the buyer-broker agreement inside the contract, right? It's that simple. Because we look at ourselves as a performer, and if we take it more seriously, and we stay in the mindset of always improving, and we know it's a scripted process, and we rehearse it, we know our opening lines, and we know our value proposition, signing a buyer-broker agreement is going to be no problem whatsoever. So the next slide I want to end with is really just my pre-approval process should you decide to engage us with one of your clients, because 30% of our transactions are midstream transactions, which is the client that wasn't getting pre-approved for what they thought, or they're having, they just didn't like the process. Our team and I would love an opportunity to work with you and your clients. So I want to highlight my pre-approval process because it's the most thorough, extensive, and most accessible in the industry that operates 7 days a week, 8 a.m. to 9 p.m., 364 days a year. Guys, this is not a punchline. Those that work with us know exactly how it operates. I mean, how many other lenders operate 7 days a week, 8 a.m. to 9 p.m., 364 days a year, right? Pain point, challenge. I have a team member that's working every single day, scheduled to 9 o'clock in front of the computer, ready, right? Friday till 9 o'clock, Saturday morning from 8 to 3, then another person from 3 to 9, another person on Sunday, 8 to 3, another person 3 to 9, 5 people just on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So you call on a Memorial Day weekend, we're answering live. Labor Day weekend, we're answering live. 4th of July, guess what? We're answering live. It's a simple 10-minute application over the phone. We don't send them to online applications. Better for the client or better for the loan officer, right? For the loan officer. But see, when we take it over the phone, that's how we're learning more about the client, right? We're learning about the client and building rapport. So then you know what documents to ask when you take a loan application over the phone. So step number 2, we then let the client know what documents we need in that client consultation. And step number 3, we pre-underwrite that file right then within 6 to 8 hours. And then step number 4, which is the most important part of the process, most important part, is the client consultation. It's a scripted, 18-minute consultation with the client where we're going over rates, payments, cash to close. If they got to pay off a car, they know from that consultation, right? Because clients have this convenient amnesia. I didn't know I needed to pay off this American Express. I didn't know you needed this verification of employment back, saying this income. I didn't know I needed to get a job. It's right there in writing, and we send you the transcripts from that call to you. So you've seen what I'm talking about, where our transcripts from the call, and in red writing, it's right there, so there's no misunderstandings. So it's emailed to the buyer's agent and to the buyer right there, and then we put the timelines that we're comfortable and hitting, and it's 10-day close, 5-day inspection. So how do we hit those timelines? We put it in red what we need to do. So I get asked a popular question, Scott, how do we refer you personally, right? And I told you at the beginning, I am a loan officer. So I'm not a branch manager, I am a loan officer. So I'm gonna explain typically how things work in the mortgage industry, right? So a lot of branch managers go out there, they're going after real estate agents, but they're also trying to recruit and try to have, they have 10, 12, 14 other loan officers within the branch. When the loan comes in, they got 10, 12 other loan officers within that branch. The same underwriters, the same processors, right? The same closers. That's the typical structure, right? But we're not a typical loan officer. Our team, our branch is one single loan officer, right? 4 government underwriters, right? 5 processors, right? 5 closing coordinators, right? Head of operations, head of processing, right? We got 10 client concierges, docs, funders, right? It's all within our process that I control, right? So you're not waiting in line in the mix with other loan officers, because there's 2 ways to go to Disney. You can go in, general population, or you can go to Fast Pass, right? Where you're not waiting in line. Because can you imagine waiting in line, right? When you're waiting 15 to 21 days for the timeline, it's not that complicated. So in my process, you're not waiting in line because we're not sharing the resources with other loan officers. Our branch is just my team, right? So if you get a signed contract on a Saturday, disclosures engaged, right? You send us a 10-day close. We're not throwing them through a loop. We're prepared, right, for those type of closings. We get a thrill out of it. We're addicted to those closings because we know that wins. You have you have a few options today, right? You could go, this guy is completely nuts. He's a sociopath, right? He's a bold-faced liar. Or you can make a decision, I just found my new mortgage partnership, right? Now, how do you refer us personally? As you can see on the last page, there's no transaction that is too small, right? Because every buyer counts, right? And every buyer is important. So 9 out of 10 agents refer me personally with a group text. So everyone pull out their cell phones right now, and I want you to go ahead and text me personally to my cell phone, your full name. So my cell, you haven't already done this before, those that have already done this before, I have you already on my cell phone, you already know. But those that have not, I want you to send me a text to my cell, which is 619-723-7289 with your full name. Just give me your full name. You've already done this before. If you came to a presentation, I'm already in your phone, you're in mine, right? But those that haven't, just send me a text message. 619-723-7289 with your full name, right? What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna reply back with 2 contacts. One is my contact card. The other one is my CRM phone number. When you guys are signing up for this event, that was from a CRM. And the reason why I want to do this, I want to separate the 2. Because my CRM, it doesn't allow group text messages between you and the client. And so some people with iPhones and stuff, they send a text to the last phone number that was texting you, which happens to be my CRM phone number, and I can't get that group text, right? So I got to reply, hey, that's my CRM number. Can you send to my personal cell? So send me a text to 619-723-7289. I'm going to reply back with 2 contact cards. So how you refer? Scott meet Jane, Jane meet Scott. You'll see how fast we respond. The only time I'm delayed is when I'm in this presentation right now, in which I have my sales manager, Justin, who's managing my cell phone right now. So that's the first way. Second way, we have a bat line that'll be on my contact card. You can call that. It rings to the entire team 7 days a week, 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. You need instant gratification. You call that number, someone picks up live. So that's the second way. Third way is you can do an email to our email distribution. I prefer the first step.